Hello and welcome to the campfire. It's so nice that you are here. If you aren't subscribed yet, please make sure you do and hang tight for some really crazy stories. Today we are going to take a look at 5 real-life abduction stories based on real people and real events that will shock you. So with that said, let's begin with our first story. This story is one of the most notorious abduction cases in recent history. The kidnapping of Elizabeth Smart. This case shocked the nation and brought attention to the terrifying reality of child abductions. Elizabeth Smart was just 14 years old when she was taken from her home in Salt Lake City, Utah, on June 5, 2002. The abduction set off a massive search effort and media frenzy as the public desperately hoped for her safe return. Her case became a symbol of every parent's worst nightmare and sparked important conversations about child safety and the resilience of the human spirit. In this video, we'll explore the details of Elizabeth Smart's abduction, the search for her, and the aftermath of this harrowing ordeal. We'll also discuss the lessons learned from this case and the impact it had on the Smart family and the community at large. So, let's begin by taking a closer look at the night that changed Elizabeth Smart's life forever. On the night of June 5, 2002, Elizabeth Smart was sleeping in her bedroom at her family's home in the affluent neighborhood of Federal Heights, Salt Lake City. She shared the room with her younger sister, Mary Catherine, who was only 9 years old at the time. At around 2 a.m., a man entered the bedroom through an open window. He held a knife to Elizabeth's throat and threatened to kill her if she made any noise. The man, who would later be identified as Brian David Mitchell, forced Elizabeth out of bed and led her out of the house. Mary Catherine, who had pretended to be asleep during the abduction, waited until she was sure the kidnapper was gone before alerting her parents. Upon discovering that Elizabeth was missing, the Smart family immediately contacted the police. They provided a description of Elizabeth and the little information they had about the abductor based on Mary Catherine's account. The police launched an investigation and the search for Elizabeth Smart began. The family, friends, and the community rallied together to support the search efforts, distributing flyers and offering prayers for Elizabeth's safe return. Brian David Mitchell, the man responsible for Elizabeth Smart's abduction, had a troubled past. Born in 1953, Mitchell had a history of drug abuse, criminal behavior, and mental instability. He had been married several times and had a record of domestic violence and sexual abuse allegations. In the years leading up to the abduction, Mitchell had become increasingly interested in religion and developed grandiose delusions. He claimed to be a prophet and believed that God had commanded him to take multiple wives, including young girls. Mitchell had been excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, LDS Church, due to his extremist views and behavior. Mitchell's religious delusions and desire to fulfill his twisted interpretation of divine prophecy were the driving forces behind his decision to abduct Elizabeth Smart. He believed that Elizabeth was destined to become his second wife, and that he was acting on God's will by kidnapping her. Wanda Barzee, Brian David Mitchell's wife at the time of the abduction, played a significant role in Elizabeth Smart's kidnapping and captivity. Born in 1945, Barzee had a history of mental illness and had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She met Mitchell in the 1980s, and the two shared a tumultuous relationship marked by domestic abuse and religious fanaticism. Barzee supported Mitchell's delusional beliefs and participated in the planning and execution of Elizabeth Smart's abduction. She was present during the kidnapping and assisted Mitchell in holding Elizabeth captive. Throughout the 9 months of captivity, Barzee acted as an enabler and accomplice to Mitchell's actions, often manipulating and psychologically abusing Elizabeth. Despite her involvement in the abduction and the trauma inflicted upon Elizabeth, Barzee would later claim that she too was a victim of Mitchell's manipulation and control. However, her actions and complicity in the kidnapping ultimately led to her arrest and conviction alongside Mitchell. Elizabeth Smart endured a harrowing 9-month ordeal at the hands of her captors, Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee. During this time, she was subjected to unimaginable physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. Mitchell repeatedly raped Elizabeth, forced her to consume alcohol and drugs, and threatened her life if she attempted to escape. The living conditions during Elizabeth's captivity were deplorable. She was kept chained up and forced to live in squalor, often going without proper food, water, or hygiene. Mitchell and Barzee moved Elizabeth to various campsites in the mountains near Salt Lake City, keeping her hidden from the ongoing search efforts. Despite the constant abuse and the hopelessness of her situation, Elizabeth Smart demonstrated remarkable resilience and strength. She found ways to cope with the trauma, such as mentally escaping into memories of her family and happier times. Elizabeth also used her faith as a source of comfort, silently praying and holding on to the belief that she would one day be rescued. Elizabeth's ability to survive the physical and emotional torment she endured is a testament to her extraordinary courage and determination. Her story serves as an inspiration to others who have faced unimaginable adversity and highlights the indomitable nature of the human spirit. The search for Elizabeth Smart began immediately after her abduction was reported. The Salt Lake City Police Department launched an extensive investigation, following up on leads and gathering evidence. They interviewed neighbors, friends, and family members, trying to piece together any information that could help locate Elizabeth. As news of the abduction spread, the community rallied together to support the search efforts. Volunteers distributed missing person flyers, and local businesses donated resources to aid in the investigation. The media coverage of the case was intense, with Elizabeth's story making national headlines and capturing the attention of people across the country. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the community, the search for Elizabeth faced numerous challenges and setbacks. The initial description of the abductor provided by Elizabeth's sister, Mary Catherine, was vague, making it difficult to identify potential suspects. False leads and dead ends frustrated investigators, and as time passed, the chances of finding Elizabeth alive seemed to dwindle. The Smart family never gave up hope, however. They made public appeals for Elizabeth's safe return and worked closely with law enforcement to keep the case in the public eye. The family's unwavering determination and the support of the community kept the search for Elizabeth alive, even in the face of overwhelming odds. On March 12, 2003, 9 months after her abduction, Elizabeth Smart was finally rescued. The break in the case came when 2 witnesses reported seeing a man and a woman in Sandy, Utah, who matched the descriptions of Elizabeth's captors. The couple was accompanied by a young girl wearing a veil, which raised suspicions. Acting on this information, the police approached the trio and questioned them. Initially, Mitchell and Barzee claimed that Elizabeth was their daughter, but when pressed further, their story began to unravel. Elizabeth, who had been warned by her captors not to reveal her true identity, finally confirmed to the police that she was indeed Elizabeth Smart. The rescue operation was swift and carefully executed. Elizabeth was safely recovered, and Mitchell and Barzee were taken into custody. The news of Elizabeth's rescue spread quickly, and the nation celebrated her safe return. Elizabeth's reunion with her family was an emotional and joyous occasion. After 9 months of unimaginable trauma and separation, she was finally back in the loving arms of her parents and siblings. The Smart family expressed their gratitude to the law enforcement officers, the media, and the countless volunteers who had worked tirelessly to bring Elizabeth home. In the immediate aftermath of her rescue, Elizabeth began the difficult process of healing and reintegrating into her life. She received medical attention and counseling to help her cope with the trauma she had endured. The love and support of her family, friends, and the wider community were instrumental in her recovery. In the years following Elizabeth Smart's rescue, her captors, Brian David Mitchell and Wanda Barzee, faced the legal consequences of their actions. The criminal proceedings against them were lengthy and complex, as questions about their mental competency and the admissibility of evidence arose. Brian David Mitchell was eventually found guilty of kidnapping and sexual assault charges in a federal trial. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Wanda Barzee pleaded guilty to federal charges of kidnapping and unlawful transportation of a minor and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. She was released in 2018 after serving her sentence. Elizabeth Smart's recovery and resilience in the face of unimaginable trauma have been nothing short of remarkable. She has become a powerful advocate for child safety and victims' rights, using her experience to help others. Elizabeth has written books, participated in documentaries, and given numerous public speeches to raise awareness about sexual abuse, kidnapping prevention, and the importance of never giving up hope. The impact of Elizabeth's abduction and rescue on the Smart family and the community has been profound. The Smart family has been vocal about their gratitude for the support they received during the search and in the aftermath of the ordeal. They have also been strong advocates for child safety legislation, and have worked to keep Elizabeth's story in the public consciousness as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and community involvement in protecting children. The Elizabeth Smart case has taught us many valuable lessons about child safety, community involvement, and the power of resilience. One of the most important takeaways is the need for increased awareness and implementation of child safety and prevention measures. This includes educating children about stranger danger, maintaining open lines of communication within families, and ensuring that homes and communities are secure. The case also highlighted the critical role that community involvement plays in missing persons cases. The outpouring of support and the tireless efforts of volunteers during the search for Elizabeth underscored the importance of community members coming together in times of crisis. It is a reminder that every person can make a difference, and that by working together, we can achieve remarkable things. Finally, Elizabeth Smart's story is a testament to the incredible resilience and hope that can be found even in the darkest of circumstances. Her ability to survive, heal, and thrive in the aftermath of her abduction is an inspiration to us all. It reminds us that no matter how difficult life may seem, there is always the possibility of a brighter future. As we come to the end of our exploration of the Elizabeth Smart case, it is clear that her story has left an indelible mark on our collective consciousness. The abduction and rescue of this young girl have become a symbol of the resilience of the human spirit and the power of a community united in the face of adversity. Elizabeth's story has also had a significant impact on public awareness and policy changes related to child safety and victims' rights. Her advocacy work has helped to bring attention to the issues of sexual abuse, kidnapping prevention, and the importance of supporting survivors. The case has led to the implementation of new laws and initiatives aimed at protecting children and assisting families in crisis. In the end, the Elizabeth Smart case teaches us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. It is a reminder of the strength and courage that lies within each of us, and the incredible things we can accomplish when we come together as a community. May we never forget the lessons learned from this remarkable young woman, and may her story continue to inspire us all to work towards a safer, more compassionate world. Now with that story finished, let's dive into the second one. The abduction of Jaycee Dugard is a case that shocked the nation and left an indelible mark on the hearts of people around the world. On June 10, 1991, 11-year-old Jaycee was kidnapped from her hometown of South Lake Tahoe, California, as she walked to her school bus stop. Little did anyone know that this tragic event would be the beginning of an 18-year ordeal that would forever change the course of Jaycee's life. Jaycee's abduction is significant not only because of the heinous nature of the crime, but also because of the extraordinary circumstances surrounding her captivity and eventual rescue. Her story is one of unimaginable trauma, resilience, and the power of the human spirit to overcome even the darkest of circumstances. It is a tale that reminds us of the importance of never giving up hope and the need for society to be vigilant in protecting its most vulnerable members. On the morning of June 10, 1991, Jaycee Dugard set out from her home in South Lake Tahoe, California, to catch her school bus. It was a routine she had followed countless times before, but on this particular day, her life would be forever altered. As Jaycee walked along the road, a car approached her, and a man, later identified as Philip Garrido, stepped out. He quickly grabbed Jaycee and pulled her into the car, where his wife Nancy was waiting. The couple then sped off, leaving behind a shocked community and a devastated family. The abduction was witnessed by several people, including Jaycee's stepfather, Carl Probin, who was the last person to see her before she was taken. He immediately contacted the police, and a massive search effort was launched to find Jaycee. The community rallied together, with volunteers combing the area and distributing flyers with Jaycee's picture and description. Despite the swift response and the tireless efforts of law enforcement and the community, no trace of Jaycee was found. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, the search for Jaycee continued, but hope began to dwindle. The Dugard family, however, never gave up. They kept Jaycee's memory alive and held on to the belief that one day she would be found and brought home. Philip Garrido, the man responsible for Jaycee Dugard's abduction, had a long and disturbing criminal history. Born in 1951, Garrido had been convicted of rape and kidnapping in the 1970s and had served time in prison. After his release, he met and married Nancy Bocanegra, who would later become his accomplice in the abduction and captivity of Jaycee Dugard. Philip Garrido's motives for kidnapping Jaycee remain unclear, but his actions were undoubtedly influenced by his deeply disturbed mind and his history of sexual violence. He had a warped sense of reality and believed that he had a special connection with God. Garrido saw himself as a religious prophet and claimed that he had the ability to control sound with his mind. Nancy Garrido, Philip's wife, played a significant role in Jaycee's abduction and captivity. She was present during the kidnapping and actively participated in the abuse and control of Jaycee throughout the years. Nancy Garrido's complicity in the crime is a disturbing reminder of the ways in which individuals can be drawn into heinous acts under the influence of a dominant and manipulative partner. For 18 long years, Jaycee Dugard endured unimaginable horrors at the hands of Philip and Nancy Garrido. She was held captive in a series of makeshift structures and tents in the backyard of the Garridos' home in Antioch, California. The living conditions were deplorable, with Jaycee being subjected to physical, sexual, and psychological abuse on a daily basis. During her captivity, Jaycee gave birth to 2 daughters, fathered by Philip Garrido. The first, named Angel, was born when Jaycee was just 14 years old, and the second, Starlit, was born 3 years later. The Garridos kept Jaycee and her daughters isolated from the outside world, and they were rarely allowed to leave the confines of the backyard compound. Philip Garrido used a variety of psychological manipulation and control tactics to keep Jaycee under his domination. He convinced her that he had supernatural powers and that she was destined to be with him. Garrido also manipulated Jaycee into believing that her family had stopped searching for her and that she had no one else to turn to. Despite the constant abuse and the hopelessness of her situation, Jaycee found the strength to survive, drawing on her love for her daughters and her unwavering hope for a better future. In the days and weeks following Jaycee Dugard's abduction, law enforcement agencies launched a massive search effort to find her. The South Lake Tahoe community rallied together, with hundreds of volunteers joining the search and distributing flyers with Jaycee's picture and description. The case garnered national attention, and Jaycee's story was featured on television programs and in newspapers across the country. Despite the extensive search efforts, no significant leads were discovered, and the case eventually went cold. The investigation was hampered by several challenges and setbacks, including the lack of physical evidence and the difficulty in tracking down potential witnesses. The Dugard family, however, never lost hope. They continued to keep Jaycee's story in the public eye and worked tirelessly with law enforcement to explore every possible lead. As the years passed, the search for Jaycee continued, but the likelihood of finding her alive seemed to diminish with each passing day. The Dugard family faced the painful reality of not knowing what had happened to their beloved daughter and sister. They held on to the hope that Jaycee would one day be found, and they never stopped fighting for her safe return. On August 24, 2009, a series of events unfolded that would finally bring an end to Jaycee Dugard's 18-year ordeal. Philip Garrido had been called in for a meeting with his parole officer after he was seen with 2 young girls on the campus of the University of California, Berkeley. The parole officer, who had become suspicious of Garrido's behavior, conducted a background check and discovered his disturbing criminal history. During the meeting, Garrido brought along Jaycee and her 2 daughters, introducing them as his nieces. The parole officer, sensing that something was amiss, separated Garrido from the girls and began to question them. It was then that Jaycee revealed her true identity and the horrifying details of her abduction and captivity. The revelation of Jaycee's true identity set in motion a swift and dramatic rescue operation. Law enforcement agents descended upon the Garrido property where they discovered the hidden compound where Jaycee and her daughters had been held captive. Philip and Nancy Garrido were immediately arrested, and Jaycee and her children were taken into protective custody. The news of Jaycee's discovery and rescue spread quickly, and the nation rejoiced at the miraculous ending to her 18-year nightmare. Jaycee was finally reunited with her family, who had never given up hope of finding her. The moment was one of overwhelming emotion and relief, as Jaycee and her loved ones began the long and difficult process of healing and rebuilding their lives. In the aftermath of Jaycee Dugard's rescue, the legal proceedings against Philip and Nancy Garrido unfolded. The couple was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, rape, and false imprisonment. In 2011, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years to life in prison, while Nancy Garrido received a sentence of 36 years to life for her role in the abduction and captivity. For Jaycee and her family, the path to recovery and healing was a long and challenging one. Jaycee had to relearn how to interact with the outside world and adjust to a life of freedom after 18 years of captivity. She underwent extensive therapy and counseling to help her cope with the trauma she had endured and to rebuild her sense of self. Despite the difficulties, Jaycee demonstrated remarkable resilience and strength. She focused on creating a stable and loving environment for her daughters and on reclaiming her life. Jaycee's story became a symbol of hope and survival, and her courage in the face of unimaginable adversity inspired people around the world. The impact of Jaycee's abduction and rescue on her family and the community was profound. The Dugard family had endured years of unimaginable pain and uncertainty, never knowing if they would ever see Jaycee again. Her return brought a sense of closure and healing, but also served as a reminder of the ongoing need for support and resources for families of missing children. The abduction of Jaycee Dugard and her subsequent 18-year captivity is a story that highlights the incredible resilience and survival instincts of the human spirit. Despite enduring unimaginable trauma and abuse, Jaycee found the strength to persevere, to hold on to hope, and to create a life for herself and her children in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. Her story also underscores the importance of never giving up hope in missing persons cases. The Dugard family's unwavering determination and faith that Jaycee would one day be found served as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope can be a sustaining force. The case also brought to light systemic failures in the handling of sex offenders and the need for reform. Philip Garrido, a convicted sex offender, was able to abduct and hold Jaycee captive for 18 years while under the supervision of parole officers. The case raised serious questions about the effectiveness of the parole system and the monitoring of known sex offenders in the community. Jaycee's story is a testament to the strength and courage of survivors of sexual violence and a call to action for society to do more to protect and support victims. It highlights the need for increased awareness, education, and resources to prevent such crimes from occurring and to ensure that survivors have access to the support and services they need to heal and rebuild their lives. Jaycee Dugard's story is one that will forever be etched in the annals of history as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of hope in the face of unimaginable adversity. Her 18-year ordeal and ultimate rescue served as a wake-up call to society, highlighting the need for greater vigilance in protecting our most vulnerable members and for increased support for survivors of sexual violence. In the years since her rescue, Jaycee has become a powerful advocate for victims' rights and has worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the issues of child abduction and sexual abuse. She has written a best-selling memoir, A Stolen Life, which chronicles her experiences and serves as a source of inspiration and hope for survivors around the world. Jaycee's legacy is one of courage, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Her story reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, and that with love, support, and determination, we can overcome even the most unimaginable of challenges. The lessons learned from Jaycee's case are many, but perhaps the most important is the need for society to come together to protect and support its most vulnerable members. We must work to create a world where no child has to endure the horrors that Jaycee faced, and where survivors are given the resources and support they need to heal and thrive. Jaycee Dugard's story is a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience of the human spirit, and a call to action for us all to do our part in creating a safer, more compassionate world. Now, with that story finished, let's dive into the next one. The Cleveland abductions, involving the kidnapping and decade-long captivity of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus, stand as a haunting reminder of the unimaginable horrors that can be inflicted upon the most vulnerable members of our society. The story of these three young women, who were abducted separately between 2002 and 2004, is one of unspeakable trauma, unbreakable spirit, and the power of hope in the face of unimaginable odds. The case of the Cleveland abductions is significant not only for the heinous nature of the crimes committed, but also for the shocking revelation that such atrocities could be carried out for so long, undetected, in the heart of a bustling city. It is a story that forces us to confront the uncomfortable realities of our society and the need for greater vigilance in protecting those most at risk. The abductions of Michelle, Amanda, and Gina may have begun as separate incidents, but their stories would become forever intertwined as they found themselves trapped in a nightmare that would span more than a decade. Their experience is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and solidarity that can emerge in the face of unimaginable adversity. The first of the three abductions occurred on August 22, 2002, when 21-year-old Michelle Knight was last seen at a cousin's house near West 106th Street and Lorraine Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. Michelle, a mother of a young son, had a difficult life, having suffered from both physical and sexual abuse in her childhood. At the time of her disappearance, her absence was not immediately reported to the police, as she was considered an adult and had a history of leaving for extended periods. The second abduction took place on April 21, 2003, when 16-year-old Amanda Berry vanished after leaving her job at a Burger King on Lorraine Avenue, just a few blocks from where Michelle was last seen. Amanda's disappearance triggered a massive search effort, with her family and the community rallying together to find her. Despite the extensive search, no trace of Amanda was found, and her case eventually went cold. The third and final abduction occurred on April 2, 2004, when 14-year-old Gina DeJesus was walking home from school on Lorraine Avenue. Gina, a close friend of Amanda Berry's family, was just a few blocks from her home when she was approached by a man who asked for help finding his lost puppy. Gina was never seen again, and her disappearance, like those of Michelle and Amanda, left her family and the community desperate for answers. The man responsible for the abductions of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus was Ariel Castro, a 52-year-old former school bus driver who lived in a nondescript house on Seymour Avenue in Cleveland. Castro, who had no prior criminal record, managed to lure each of the three young women into his vehicle before restraining them and bringing them back to his home. Inside the house, Castro had created a makeshift prison, with the women confined to separate rooms that were kept locked and boarded up. He subjected his captives to unimaginable physical, sexual, and psychological abuse, repeatedly raping and beating them over the course of their decade-long captivity. Castro's ability to maintain the facade of a normal life while committing such heinous crimes is a chilling reminder of the ways in which evil can hide in plain sight. He managed to keep his captives hidden away, even as friends and family members visited his home, by using a combination of threats, manipulation, and physical barriers. For Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus, the years they spent in captivity were marked by unimaginable horror and trauma. They were subjected to daily physical and sexual abuse at the hands of their captor, Ariel Castro. The women were kept chained and locked in separate rooms, with Castro controlling every aspect of their lives, from what they ate to when they were allowed to use the bathroom. Despite the unrelenting abuse and the hopelessness of their situation, the three women found strength in each other, forming a bond that would help them survive the unimaginable. They supported one another through the darkest of times, offering comfort and encouragement in the face of their shared trauma. During their captivity, Amanda Berry gave birth to a daughter, fathered by Castro. The presence of the child brought a new dimension to the horror of their situation, but also served as a source of hope and motivation for the women. They were determined to protect the child and to find a way to escape, not just for themselves, but for the sake of the innocent life that had been brought into their nightmare. As the years passed, the women never lost hope that they would one day be free. They clung to the belief that their families were still searching for them, and that they would eventually be rescued. This hope, combined with their unwavering support for one another, would prove to be the key to their ultimate survival and escape. In the aftermath of each abduction, the families of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus were left reeling, desperate for answers and clinging to the hope that their loved ones would be found. The community rallied around them, with volunteers joining in the search efforts and distributing flyers with the missing women's pictures and descriptions. The police investigated each disappearance as a separate case, following up on leads and interviewing potential witnesses. However, the lack of any substantial evidence or credible sightings made the search efforts increasingly challenging as time passed. For Michelle Knight, the search was complicated by the fact that her disappearance was not immediately reported to the police. As a result, valuable time was lost in the initial stages of the investigation. Amanda Berry and Gina DeJesus' cases received more attention, but despite the extensive search efforts, no significant breakthroughs were made. As the years passed, the families of the missing women never gave up hope. They continued to keep the cases in the public eye, holding vigils and press conferences to ensure that their loved ones were not forgotten. They worked tirelessly with law enforcement, following up on every potential lead and never allowing the search to be abandoned. On May 6, 2013, after more than a decade in captivity, Amanda Berry seized a chance to escape. Castro had left the house, and Berry found that he had forgotten to lock the big inside door. She screamed for help through the screen door, catching the attention of neighbors who came to her aid. One of the neighbors, Charles Ramsey, helped kick through the bottom of the door, allowing Berry to escape with her 6-year-old daughter. Berry immediately called 911, telling the dispatcher, "I've been kidnapped, and I've been missing for 10 years, and I'm here. I'm free now." Police arrived at the scene and entered Castro's house, where they discovered Michelle Knight and Gina DeJesus. The women were finally free after enduring years of unimaginable trauma and abuse. The news of the women's escape and rescue spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the Cleveland community and the entire nation. People were overjoyed at the miraculous ending to the decade-long mystery, but horrified at the details of the women's ordeal that began to emerge. For the families of Michelle, Amanda, and Gina, the moment was one of overwhelming emotion and relief. After years of never giving up hope, their loved ones were finally coming home. The reunion scenes were tear-filled and joyous, as the women were embraced by the family members who had never stopped searching for them. In the immediate aftermath of the women's escape, Ariel Castro was arrested and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, rape, and aggravated murder. He initially pleaded not guilty to the charges, but later entered into a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. On August 1, 2013, Castro was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years, with the judge stating that he would never be released. For Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus, the path to healing and recovery was a long and challenging one. They had to grapple with the trauma of their decade-long captivity and the difficulties of reintegrating into a world that had changed so much in their absence. Each woman coped with the aftermath of their ordeal in her own way. Michelle Knight, who had suffered the longest and most severe abuse, became an advocate for survivors of sexual violence and a symbol of resilience and strength. Amanda Berry focused on creating a stable life for herself and her daughter, while Gina DeJesus worked to rebuild her relationships with family and friends. The impact of the Cleveland abductions on the community was profound. The case served as a painful reminder of the need for greater awareness and action in protecting vulnerable individuals from predators like Ariel Castro. It also highlighted the importance of never giving up hope in missing persons cases, and the power of a community coming together in the face of tragedy. The Cleveland abductions case is a stark reminder of the evil that can lurk in our midst, and the devastating impact that such crimes can have on victims, families, and entire communities. It is a story that forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the ways in which society can fail to protect its most vulnerable members, and the need for greater vigilance and action in preventing such atrocities from occurring. One of the most striking aspects of the case is the incredible resilience and strength demonstrated by Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus. Despite enduring unimaginable trauma and abuse, these women never lost hope and never gave up on the belief that they would one day be free. Their story is a testament to the unbreakable spirit of survivors and the power of hope in the face of even the darkest of circumstances. The case also highlights the critical importance of community involvement and support in missing persons cases. The families of the abducted women never gave up on their search, and the community rallied around them, offering resources and assistance in keeping the cases in the public eye. This unwavering support and determination played a crucial role in the ultimate discovery and rescue of the women. Another important lesson from the Cleveland abductions is the need for a more comprehensive and coordinated approach to investigating and solving missing persons cases. The fact that Castro was able to carry out his crimes for so long without detection raises serious questions about the effectiveness of law enforcement and social services in identifying and intervening in cases of abuse and exploitation. The abductions of Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina DeJesus stand as a painful reminder of the evil that can exist in our world and the devastating impact that such crimes can have on victims and their families. Their story is one of unimaginable trauma, incredible resilience, and the power of hope in the face of the darkest of circumstances. The legacy of these three remarkable women is one of survival, strength, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship and solidarity. Their experience serves as a call to action for society to do more to protect and support vulnerable individuals, and to never give up hope in the search for missing loved ones. In the years since their escape, Michelle, Amanda, and Gina have each worked to rebuild their lives and to use their experiences to make a positive impact on the world. They have become advocates for survivors of sexual violence and have worked to raise awareness about the issues of abduction and exploitation. Their story is a powerful reminder of the strength and resilience of the human spirit and the importance of never losing hope, even in the face of the most unimaginable adversity. It is a story that will continue to inspire and motivate us to work towards a world where no one has to endure the horrors that these women faced, and where every missing person is brought home safely to their loved ones. Now, with that story finished, let's dive into the next one. The Chowchilla school bus kidnapping stands as one of the most bizarre and shocking crimes in American history. On July 15, 1976, a group of 26 children and their bus driver were abducted at gunpoint from the small town of Chowchilla, California, in broad daylight. The perpetrators, later identified as Frederick Woods, James Schoenfeld, and Richard Schoenfeld, planned to demand a $5 million ransom for the safe return of the children. The case captivated the nation and sparked a massive manhunt as authorities raced against time to find the missing children and bring them home safely. The Chowchilla kidnapping remains a harrowing reminder of the vulnerability of our children and the importance of community vigilance in keeping them safe. On the afternoon of July 15, 1976, a school bus carrying 26 children, ranging in age from 5 to 14, was making its regular rounds in the small town of Chowchilla, California. As the bus made its way down the road, a van suddenly blocked its path, forcing the driver, 55-year-old Frank Edward Ray, to stop. Three armed men wearing masks and sunglasses emerged from the van and boarded the bus. They ordered Ray and the children to exit the vehicle and quickly loaded them into the back of the van. The men then drove the van around for several hours, with the terrified children huddled together in the dark, not knowing where they were being taken or what would happen to them. Eventually, the kidnappers brought the van to a stop at a remote quarry in Livermore, California, approximately 100 miles away from Chowchilla. There, they forced the children and Ray into a buried moving truck that had been outfitted with makeshift ventilation and rudimentary sanitation facilities. The three men responsible for the Chowchilla kidnapping were Frederick Woods, 24, and brothers James Schoenfeld, 24, and Richard Schoenfeld, 22. All three came from wealthy families in the San Francisco Bay Area and had no prior criminal records. The mastermind behind the plot was Frederick Woods, who had conceived of the idea as a way to solve his family's financial problems. Woods had a history of reckless behavior and had been involved in several failed business ventures, leaving him heavily in debt. James and Richard Schoenfeld, who were friends with Woods, agreed to participate in the scheme, seeing it as an opportunity to make a significant amount of money quickly. The three men spent months planning the kidnapping, acquiring the necessary vehicles and equipment, and scouting potential locations to hide the children. Once the children and Frank Edward Ray were forced into the buried moving truck, they found themselves in a nightmarish situation. The truck was hot, stuffy, and pitch black, with barely enough room for everyone to sit down. The children, who ranged in age from 5 to 14, were terrified and crying, not understanding what was happening or why they had been taken. Ray, who had been entrusted with the safety of the children, did his best to keep them calm and reassure them that they would be okay. He led them in prayer and encouraged them to be brave, even as he himself was grappling with the horror of their situation. As the hours passed, the conditions inside the truck became increasingly desperate. The air was thin, and many of the children began to feel sick and dizzy. Some of the older children took turns fanning the younger ones, trying to keep them cool and comfortable in the suffocating heat. After being trapped in the buried truck for over 16 hours, Frank Edward Ray and some of the older children decided to take matters into their own hands. Using a piece of wood that had splintered off the truck's makeshift roof, they began to dig their way out through the loosely packed earth. Inch by inch, they clawed at the soil, creating a small tunnel that eventually broke through to the surface. Ray helped the children climb out of the truck and into the fresh air, where they found themselves in a remote quarry, far from home and with no idea where they were. Despite their exhaustion and fear, Ray and the children set out on foot, determined to find help. They walked for hours through the rugged terrain, with the younger children piggybacking on the backs of the older ones when they became too tired to walk. Finally, they stumbled upon a quarry worker who immediately called the authorities. The children were taken to a nearby hospital for examination and treatment. While news of their incredible escape spread like wildfire, the Chowchilla kidnapping case made national headlines and sparked a massive manhunt for the perpetrators. The 3 men were eventually arrested and charged with multiple counts of kidnapping and robbery. During their trial, the men claimed that they had never intended to harm the children and that the kidnapping was solely motivated by financial desperation. However, the jury was not convinced, and all 3 were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. For the children and their families, the aftermath of the kidnapping was a long and difficult road. Many of the children suffered from nightmares, anxiety, and other psychological trauma as a result of their ordeal. Some struggled with guilt, feeling that they could have done more to help their classmates during the captivity. Frank Edward Ray, who had been hailed as a hero for his role in the escape, struggled with the weight of his own trauma. He had been the one responsible for the safety of the children, and the guilt of not being able to protect them haunted him for years. The Chowchilla kidnapping case remains one of the most notorious and bizarre crimes in American history. It is a testament to the bravery and resilience of the children and their bus driver, who managed to survive a horrific ordeal and ultimately bring their captors to justice. The case also serves as a stark reminder of the importance of community vigilance in keeping our children safe. The idea that a group of men could abduct an entire school bus in broad daylight was a shocking wake-up call for many parents and educators, who began to reevaluate their own safety protocols and emergency response plans. In the years since the kidnapping, many of the children have spoken out about their experiences and the long-term impact it had on their lives. Some have become advocates for child safety and trauma recovery, using their own stories to help others heal and find hope. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Chowchilla kidnapping is the incredible story of survival and the unbreakable spirit of the children and their bus driver. In the face of unimaginable terror and adversity, they found the strength to persevere and ultimately triumphed over their captors. The Chowchilla school bus kidnapping is a harrowing tale of innocence shattered and the unimaginable strength of the human spirit. It is a story that continues to captivate and inspire people around the world, decades after the events took place. The bravery of the 26 children and their bus driver, Frank Edward Ray, in the face of unspeakable horror, is a testament to the resilience and courage that lies within us all. Their story serves as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and determination can lead us to safety and justice. As we reflect on the lessons and legacy of the Chowchilla kidnapping, we are reminded of the importance of community, vigilance, and the unbreakable bonds of human connection. May we never forget the incredible strength and bravery of these children. And may their story continue to inspire us to work towards a world where every child can grow up safe, loved, and free from harm. Now, with that story finished, let's dive into the final story for today, story number 5. The abduction of Patty Hearst, granddaughter of media mogul William Randolph Hearst, is one of the most bizarre and perplexing cases in American history. On February 4th, 1974, Patty Hearst was kidnapped from her Berkeley, California apartment by the Symbionese Liberation Army, SLA, a radical left-wing terrorist group. What followed was a series of events that captivated the nation and raised questions about the nature of free will, coercion, and the influence of radical ideology. Patty Hearst's abduction and subsequent transformation into a member of the SLA, participating in their criminal activities, has become a symbol of the tumultuous social and political landscape of the 1970s. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the power of indoctrination and the blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. On the evening of February 4th, 1974, 19-year-old Patty Hearst was studying with her fiancé, Stephen Weed, in their Berkeley apartment when there was a knock at the door. When Weed answered, a group of armed individuals burst into the apartment, brutally beat him, and dragged Hearst out of the apartment and into a waiting car. The kidnappers, members of the Symbionese Liberation Army, SLA, quickly claimed responsibility for the abduction. The SLA was a small but notorious radical group that espoused a mix of left-wing politics, black nationalism, and anti-capitalist ideology. They had gained notoriety the previous year for the murder of Marcus Foster, the first black superintendent of the Oakland Unified School District. In the days following Hearst's abduction, the SLA made a series of demands, including the release of 2 of their members from prison and the distribution of millions of dollars worth of food to the poor. The Hearst family, desperate for Patty's safe return, agreed to the food distribution demand, but the other demands went unmet. In the weeks and months following her abduction, Patty Hearst's story took a bizarre and unexpected turn. On April 3, 1974, she was caught on surveillance camera, participating in an armed robbery of a San Francisco bank, wielding a machine gun and yelling at terrified customers. A few days later, Hearst released a tape-recorded message in which she denounced her former life and declared her allegiance to the SLA, adopting the name Tanya in honor of a fallen comrade. She claimed that she had not been brainwashed or coerced, but had instead undergone a sincere political awakening and was now committed to the SLA's revolutionary cause. Over the next several months, Hearst participated in several other criminal activities with the SLA, including another bank robbery and a failed attempt to plant bombs at several locations in Los Angeles. She became one of the most wanted individuals in the United States, with her face plastered on FBI posters and her story dominating national news headlines. The question of whether Hearst was a willing participant in the SLA's activities or a victim of coercion and brainwashing became a matter of intense public debate. Some saw her as a spoiled rich girl who had turned her back on her privileged upbringing to join a terrorist group, while others believed that she had been manipulated and indoctrinated by her captors. On September 18, 1975, after more than 19 months on the run, Patty Hearst was captured by the FBI in a San Francisco apartment. She was emaciated, disoriented, and suffering from a variety of health problems as a result of her time in hiding. Hearst was immediately arrested and charged with a litany of crimes, including bank robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. Her trial, which began in January 1976, was a media circus, with journalists and spectators packing the courtroom to catch a glimpse of the infamous heiress turned revolutionary. Throughout the trial, Hearst's defense team argued that she had been brainwashed and coerced by the SLA and was not responsible for her actions. They pointed to the brutal conditions of her captivity, including repeated sexual assaults and psychological torture, as evidence of the trauma she had endured. However, the prosecution painted a different picture, arguing that Hearst had willingly joined the SLA and participated in their criminal activities. They pointed to her tape-recorded messages and her apparent enthusiasm during the bank robberies as evidence of her guilt. In the end, the jury found Hearst guilty of bank robbery and using a firearm during a felony. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison, despite pleas for leniency from her family and supporters. Patty Hearst's story did not end with her conviction and imprisonment. In 1979, after serving 22 months of her sentence, she was released on bail pending an appeal. During this time, she married her former bodyguard, Bernard Shaw, and began to rebuild her life. In 1981, Hearst's sentence was commuted by President Jimmy Carter, and she was eventually pardoned by President Bill Clinton in 2001. She went on to become an actress and author, writing a memoir about her experiences with the SLA and appearing in several films and television shows. Despite the resolution of her legal case, the question of Hearst's culpability and the nature of her involvement with the SLA has remained a matter of debate. Some continue to see her as a victim of coercion and trauma, while others view her as a willing participant in the group's criminal activities. The abduction of Patty Hearst and her subsequent involvement with the Symbionese Liberation Army remains one of the most bizarre and captivating stories in American history. It is a tale that speaks to the power of ideology, the complexities of the human psyche, and the blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. On a broader level, Hearst's story is also a reflection of the tumultuous social and political landscape of the 1970s. The decade was marked by widespread disillusionment with traditional institutions and values, and a growing interest in radical politics and alternative lifestyles. The SLA, with its mix of left-wing ideology and violent tactics, was in many ways a product of this era. For Patty Hearst herself, the experience of being kidnapped and indoctrinated by the SLA was undoubtedly traumatic and life-altering. Her story serves as a powerful reminder of the ways in which even the most privileged and sheltered individuals can be vulnerable to the influence of extreme ideologies and the manipulation of others. At the same time, Hearst's case also raises difficult questions about the nature of personal responsibility and the limits of coercion. While there is no doubt that she endured immense trauma and psychological manipulation during her time with the SLA, her apparent willingness to participate in their criminal activities remains a matter of debate and controversy. The abduction of Patty Hearst is a story that continues to fascinate and perplex us nearly 5 decades after it first captured the nation's attention. It is a tale of privilege and power, of idealism and disillusionment, and of the ways in which even the most unlikely individuals can become caught up in the tide of history. As we reflect on the lessons and legacy of Patty Hearst's story, we are reminded of the importance of critical thinking, personal responsibility, and the need to resist the allure of extremist ideologies. We are also called to consider the ways in which trauma and coercion can shape the human experience, and the challenges of seeking justice and accountability in the face of complex moral and legal questions. Ultimately, the story of Patty Hearst is one that will continue to be studied, debated, and reinterpreted for generations to come. It is a powerful reminder of the enduring fascination and complexity of the human experience, and of the ways in which even the most extraordinary events can shed light on the fundamental struggles and contradictions of our society. And thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and like the video. See you on the next one.